Devin Booker and Bradley Beal still out, and we don't have a lot of details. On today's episode of Locked On Suns, we'll talk about what we do know, what we expect might happen, and how that changes this early part of the Phoenix Suns season for them, as well as Kevin Durant and the rest of the team that's still playing. Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 7 seasons, a writer at Suns.com, and the host of the Just Basketball Show. Wherever you get your podcasts, a big thanks for making Locked On Suns your first listen. Happy Thursday. We have Suns Spurs round 2, so hit follow or subscribe wherever you're finding this show. We're free and available everywhere. Get that recap, as well as much more, Monday through Friday throughout the rest of the NBA season right here. Become an everydayer. Thousands of people are doing it. You might as well join the group. Today we are joined by Aaron Edwards, as we are every week, to talk injuries, unfortunately, what we've seen now through 4 games, and a little bit of what to expect on Thursday night with Suns Spurs round 2. But let's start with those injuries, Aaron. Beal and Booker still out, and it sounds like that won't change anytime soon. So we'll get into that. Today's show brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Bet $5 and win $150 in bonus bets. That's $150 into your account if your team wins. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So we had Flex from PHNX Sports reporting that Booker might be back at the soonest, it sounds like, next Wednesday in Chicago, Aaron, and Beal video footage of him shooting at the practice facility, but it sounds from Frank Vogel like neither guy is necessarily doing cardio, even outside of, lifting and whatnot in the training center. And none of that sounds great to me. I thought this was precautionary at first, but it's certainly not that. Vogel even said, we're not being cautious. We're not being patient. He wouldn't describe it that way. He said it's just recovering from an injury. I don't know if we want to do 1 to 10. How much does this freak you out to happen this early in the season with 2 star players?
The Beal thing, I would put it at like a 7, probably. And the Book thing, it's like a 4. I think that if it was really, really like a playoff series or something, he'd probably play. I think it's just an ankle sprain. They can linger if you let them, and it's early in the season, and you have Kevin Durant, so don't even put him in the position to have a lingering ankle. Just get it out of the way now. And that's what I think they're like. Yes, they said it's not precautionary, and maybe he's like a little bit hurt than they say he is. But I just think you don't want a lingering ankle injury for a whole season. So might as well. Yeah. It's better that it happened now than later.
Yeah, ankle, foot, toe, whatever part of it is the worst. I don't think you want any of that and re-aggravating any of it, or thinking one part's healed and the other thing comes back. I get it. He finished the game, though, and even after the game didn't seem to think it was anything too extreme. You never can take him seriously, I think. Unfortunately, he's going to mostly say he's good, but still, I think you're probably right. On Beal, I guess the other thing on Booker is he said on the broadcast last night that he was close and just kind of checking the boxes and whatever, Yeah. Take that with a grain of salt. He wasn't too specific, but even he is on the record, which is a little better than random reports. But speaking of random reports, we had, are you familiar with the Twitter account DColdest? Aaron,
No.
Did you see this? All right. So I'm not stating this as fact, but I think it's contributing to the panic. And so I want to address it a little bit. Some random Twitter account in Washington, I guess, said that this back issue has been going on since last season, and the Wizards medical staff ignored it. So I think, as far as I can follow where some of the panic around Beal came from Suns fans, it's this Twitter post from 5 days ago, October 27th on Friday night. This person is not a reporter. They literally don't even have a Twitter bio. I don't know who this person is, but it went viral and people started to run with it. Then there's the video and whatever. I don't want to think that it's gone on past last season or dating back to last season or anything, but I do think it's reasonable to look at back spasms and already what has been a week absence and doesn't appear to be ending anytime soon and get a little worried because that's not exactly something that just goes away, that just vanishes after you like run on the treadmill for a few weeks and take it easy. That can come back at any time. So yeah, I don't want to do more than a 7 either because I think we don't have enough details for me to really get there, but it seems like something that could be managed for a while, even when he does return to the court.
Yeah, I think even when he does return, it's going to affect his minutes. It's going to affect the rotation probably. It's not going to be probably him and an entire bench lineup anymore. Like Book's going to have to carry a lot of the weight that he used to carry before. I think it's going to do a lot to how Vogel is going to treat him because it can come at any time. Like he might just have to save him for fourths sometimes and see if his back can hold up. Like it's just going to change how he like relies on him. And luckily, like Eric Gordon has been playing well and Grayson's finally like coming together, but you kind of want your other max player to play.
You do want the best players to play. I mean, the Suns have obviously San Antonio tonight, which we'll talk a little bit about, then a back-to-back with 2 afternoon games, which is brutal, Philly and Detroit this weekend, and then Chicago, which is the game I mentioned Book might come back for, according to Flex, next Wednesday, then the first in-season tournament game, home against the Lakers, and then November 12th against the Thunder, and we can go on and on from there. But does this, if Booker misses the next 3 games minimum, and Beal maybe even more than that, and we know it is the type of thing that, yeah, maybe their minutes will be affected, maybe they're not at peak form right when they come back. Does it change are you at the point yet where it's like, oh, they might have a worse record than I thought, or seeding stuff starting to come into play for you at all? Or is it they've been playing well enough, like you said, and if they can tread water, they'll be all right?
A little bit of both. Like, I think that we might have a worse record than I thought. I really thought if we were healthy, we would have ripped these first couple off like pretty easily. But now that's just not the world that we live in. So we might drop a couple that I was sure about a month ago.
Like against the Spurs, maybe at home.
Yeah, like that. And I wasn't really worried about the Laker game. Like, it's just a couple that I just thought that we would have had in the bag. But yeah, I think that, I mean, Memphis is 0-4, so I think seeding stuff, everybody's still figuring each other out, and teams that we thought were going to be good aren't great and stuff like that. So I think we still are going to be fine treading water, banging like the 5th, 6th spot, and then going on a run, hopefully, if we do get healthy. But yeah, like, I don't like what the record might look like when these guys get back.
I definitely, the early part of the season was the thing I couldn't peg all preseason, trying to predict or guess or analyze any of this, because I was like, I could easily see a situation where they just hit the ground running, like you're saying. And I think because of the simplicity, I thought we could see from the offense and how that actually could work to their benefit. It wasn't going to require a whole bunch of chemistry to develop and all that for them to just rip off incredible quarters, incredible games like we saw in the preseason. But I also did wonder, well, minutes, defense, rotation, young guys, I actually could also see a case where they started out quiet. So I kind of averaged it out to, I only predicted them for 51 wins, in part because I couldn't get a handle on some of that stuff and we didn't know about the health and the load management and everything. So considering I went pretty low in the first place, I'm not going to back off that now. But yeah, whether it's like even something like the in-season tournament, this stuff does matter and it'll affect them. It's just a matter of, I think it's honestly nice that they still got Utah, San Antonio, Detroit, Chicago. Like, the teams aren't exactly scary. They have Utah twice in a couple weeks again. They're going to play Utah 3 times in the first month. So some of that will help, but yeah, it's just a matter of when and how good those guys are when they come back. And I don't think they'll rush them. I think when those guys come back, it might be a little bit of a minutes limit, but we should expect like they're going to take their time, especially because it is So important to be healthy by the end. All right. On the other side of this has been the players still playing, including Kevin Durant, who has racked up a lot of minutes, been incredibly efficient and effective, and had to figure it out with a group of role players, as he has a lot of times in his career. So we'll give our observations from this first stretch and what we expect as it continues next. First, today's show brought to you by Prize Picks. With the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League over at Prize Picks. That is a special, as the name says, league that they created just for this NBA season. Combo projections, 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. Let's say LeBron James and Travis Kelce at a 10.5 combo of threes made and receptions. So it's not just your lineup being able to be an assortment of players from different sports, but now the projections are as well. Prize Picks, as you already know, is a combination of daily fantasy and I don't even know, like almost like cards. I feel like you have all the players you love all in one place, no pool, no opponent, no league. It is just you versus the Prize Picks player projections. They even offer a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. You have a player who exits, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with that injury insurance policy, a whole tons of goodies from Prize Picks. PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNBA is the place to go. Use that code LockedOnNBA when you make your first deposit to get that deposit matched up to $100. That's PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNBA to sign up. LockedOnNBA, the code when you make that first deposit to get it matched up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Okay, so Aaron, I talked a little bit on the recap show from the Spurs game and just throughout this whole stretch about how KD has looked and different ways that they've adjusted. I think the Suns, Vogel especially, but even some of the players have felt better the past 2 games, especially the Jazz and the Spurs games, about how the offense has kind of played off of Durant. And to me, I think you can see it. I think that the spacing, the decision-making, the cutting, like it is better, but and the points say so, 126 against the Jazz, 115 against the Spurs, but it's also the Jazz and the Spurs. So where would you say that they are in terms of playing a different kind of style maybe than they expected to, and the other players on the court helping to support Durant on the offensive end when they're out there?
I've obviously liked it the last 2 games, but my worry has always been what happened in the 4th of that Laker game. It's just when KD's been carrying for a while and he's too tired, can the other guys score? And we saw that against a good defense and good players. That's just not the case right now. So yes, like beating up on like younger teams that aren't really that great, it has looked like smooth, and when they get misses, they get to running. And I think that's how this is going to look even when Book and Beal get back. And like Grayson Allen and Eric Gordon, they have been aggressive on like the break and all that. But I think you're not going to always get to run like against teams like the Lakers and Denver, and your half court stuff has got to work. And I know that it was just a couple months ago, but I'm still worried about that Aaron Gordon KD situation because he's strong and he's really comfortable guarding Kevin Durant right now. So that's like the stuff that we probably have to get better at, not just their confidence, but how can we score when KD's kind of having a rough one?
Yeah, I mean, I think to reiterate, I do feel like the activity and the ball movement from the other guys has been better since that first week. Just guys popping into space, guys relocating around the arc rather than just being stationary. The ball movement, I think, has been good after Durant gives it up, to where it's not just one pass and a shot, or, one pass and like, holy crap, what am I doing with the ball here? It's been a little more fluid, a little more comfortable. But like last night specifically, I think we saw a couple more things that would make me even more optimistic in terms of Durant not having it to have to be so hard for Durant when he does score, because I think that's part of what the problem was in the 4th quarter against the Lakers and in that Warriors game too. It's not just what's everybody else doing, but it's like how much attention is he getting and everything else. Is him initiating in transition more, the guys looking for him on the outlet pass, rather than just taking it themselves. And then all of a sudden he already has a guy glued to him. Even if you beat the defense down the court, they're going to find KD, and then it might not even turn into a transition possession. I also like that they put Gordon and Allen on the court together when he was off more. I think that's going to just have to be something they do. I mean, that's probably their second and third best creators right now, as crazy as that sounds. So it's like, all right, we know Durant is going to get decent offense out of, even if it's like Goodwin, Little, Watanabe, and Eubanks out there with him. Like, it can work. The other lineups, when he's not out there, you got to just throw everything that you can. And so I have liked that. But big picture, I think it's just going to be a slog. I mean, it's flashbacks to what we've been talking about with Booker for 2 years, right? It's just, how much can you expect from a guy when he's the only great creator out there? And then when he's not even out there, you're just kind of crossing your fingers. I mean, I don't know. That's not going to change. I don't think somebody's suddenly going to start doing things we haven't seen before. So they're just going to have to eke out some of these tight wins and try to beat up on the bad teams, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like a roster construction like it was before. It wasn't just the guys that we had, and we just had to do that. Like, we don't have the guys that we have. We don't have the rotation that we should have. So we don't know how it's going to work. Like, we don't know how a Beal Gordon lineup will work. We don't know how a Book Grayson Allen lineup will work. We don't know any of that stuff yet while KD rests. So I think, if you would have told me that Grayson Allen and Eric Gordon had to be our point and shooting guard starters for a long stretch at the beginning of the season, I would have told you that, that offense might look rough when Kevin Durant sits down.
Yeah, I don't know exactly when this stat is from, but Steven Perjone, who writes it, Bright Side of the Sun, and is all over, had the stat that the Durant, no Booker, no Beal lineups, which Beal hasn't played, of course, and the Booker thing was only one game. So that's quite a big sample already. Has a non-garbage time, so like the end of that Jazz game and stuff doesn't count. Net rating of plus 30 and 163 possessions. So like, it's working. And again, like I said at the end of the last segment, even in Brooklyn, in Golden State, in Oklahoma City, he can be an offense. So I'm not trying to say that they're going to just start blowing games to teams like the Spurs over and over, but I think the last question to ask would just be, because I've liked the way that they've mixed it up, and it's not just ISOs for Durant. I think that was one of the things in that Golden State game where I was like, he's not really in motion a lot. He's not really operating as a playmaker or a screener or anything, and he's done that more. But do you feel like the stuff we're seeing them get better at that we've talked about, is that translatable? Is it going to have to be a whole nother, opening night again when Booker and Beal are finally on the court? How much of what we're seeing do you think is actually going to mean something in terms of how this team clicks?
I think that KD has gotten, if he can get used to Grayson and Eric Gordon, and I mean, it's not like they're like terrible, but I think once you have better players and he can kind of rest on certain sides of the court, he doesn't always have to be in constant motion on offense. The offense is running through him right now, and I don't think that'll like shut him down when like better players show up. I just think it'll help with the minutes and help with the rest, and he doesn't have to initiate the offense and then get down and probably get switched onto a center every once in a while and have to do that. Like, I think it's just going to make the game go smoother, and they'll kind of get on board a lot faster. But the Warriors thing, I think it was just, he kind of just got hassled every time he got the ball, and he knows that's how people are going to play him. They're going to lean on him. They're going to try to get physical. And I think it was just kind of like the first game kind of situation.
Yeah, I think I do stand by what I said on the recap show yesterday, which is that I think some of what the role players are having to do is overextend it a little bit. And I think somebody like Nasir Little or Josh Okogie or even Nurkic, who has made some mistakes here and there, understandably, if they were in an even smaller role doing even less, we probably would feel better about them. And I think they would have had a more natural integration here. But in general, like, big picture with this team, as I said already, the simplicity to me is what makes them so dangerous. They don't have to run a bunch of fancy stuff to be great on offense. So if you're telling me there's a little more movement off the ball from Booker or Beal spacing the floor, or just the pure space of the gravity that those guys have. The defense has to guard them more than they have to guard some of the players we're seeing out there now. More weapons to go downhill in transition, some of that stuff. Like it should just help, and it's not going to have to be relearning a whole bunch. But I do think we might see some different guys role player wise pop all of a sudden when everybody's back, rather than right now. Like the bar is just higher for the role players to feel like they're making a contribution because they have to do so much to win these games. But I think a good place to go is the Spurs game, which there are some lessons to be learned from. We can talk about what went wrong on Tuesday as we see them again on Thursday. We'll do that next. First, today's show brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $150 straight to your account if your team wins. If you've been thinking about FanDuel, there is no better time to get in on the action than right now. I'm looking at the Phoenix Suns odds here on Thursday night against the San Antonio Spurs, and FanDuel does not have odds. We have Lakers, Clippers. The Lakers are favorites technically at home. That should be a fun one. Doesn't appear that there will be a Harden, but Kawhi and Paul George. We have Kings Warriors rematch. All of those, plus of course the NFL odds and college football odds every weekend. Spreads, player props, over-enders, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, let's close out with quick thoughts on this Spurs matchup, Aaron. What did you feel like was the biggest takeaway you had from that Tuesday game, since we haven't talked since it went downhill late?
It was just not getting stops. Like once they can't run, it just becomes like way less fun of an offense for them. And just terrible turnovers. I mean, they were getting good shots. They were just kind of missing them in half court. And the Spurs were hitting some tough shots. Like some of those threes by Vassell, I think it was. Mm-hmm. Like he just went off, and it was just some impossible shots that they hit down the stretch. It wasn't really anything you can learn from it, other than Vogel probably should have used that timeout at the end.
Sure. I think I feel bad sometimes with guys, especially as long as some of these players have been around, where Durant got 10 versions of the same question about what went wrong. And it's like, it's game 4. They came back. Crazy stuff happened at the end. Dude got scratched in the face. Like, it just doesn't always have to be a story. You know, even in the playoffs, it's like, we lost. That's what happened tonight. You know what I mean? But I do think a few things. One is, you can see in some ways, like, what's their heat check stopping plan? Like, who is that? You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't know what that answer is right now. And to me, Grayson Allen, he's like one of those guys that's a good team defender who you can survive with. I don't know if he's much more than that, you know, and I feel like we're kind of seeing that over the first little while. Again, a bigger role than expected, all those caveats, but he's not a stopper. I don't think anyone would call him that. Yeah. And like Little, not really playing a lot, not super trustworthy on both ends right now. Like,
I feel like you're going to the Bates Diop again.
I don't think we're going to see him, but and he's not a stopper. I mean, that I've been honest about from the beginning. He's a good team defender, if anything. He is not a stopper. And so, yeah, it's like, well, when Vassell's just smashing pull-up threes in your face, or Keldon Johnson's hot, or whatever, what do you do? Like, what's the plan there? And so, I don't know. And then I would say on the Spurs side, I'm curious if they put Wembanyama on Durant at all in this game. They didn't do it in the last one, even though Durant was going off, a similar thing, and he's clearly the guy you should put on Durant when Durant is going off, and they just didn't really do that. So those would be the two things. It's just kind of, what are the answers that they have if it is another kind of high-scoring game and whatever. But yeah, I mean, I covered it yesterday too. They just lost the possession battle, and for this team with two guys out, it's not going to be tenable really at all. What did you think of Wembanyama in general, though? Is that the first time you've watched him? I think I watched the Mavs game a little bit, but I was there. That was the first up close view I've gotten of him.
I've watched 3 of his games, and the first game he took a lot of threes, and he didn't really go into he didn't pass the free throw line much, but until like the fourth quarter. But once he gets his back to the basket and they kind of feed him in the middle post, he can do a lot with the ball. And I can't wait till Pop uses him more like that instead of just kind of a guard.
Do you think it'll happen at all this year? I kind of don't.
What, the mid post?
Facing up, posting up, lobs, anything. I think they're like, your knees are going to break in half if you're over there, brother. Get out. Just come back up to the 3-point line.
In the fourth quarter for the Mavs, he was getting the ball, he was getting switches, he was getting the ball in the mid to low post, and he was making good passes and hitting fadeaways over shorter people. If Pop wants to use him like that, it's the perfect scenario for him.
He made a couple great passes. I think one of them was late to, I want to say, Vassell, and it ended up as a turnover. He made another one, I believe, to Collins that might have been an assist earlier, just where he reads the defensive attention really fast and he finds where the ball needs to go. It's not like he's, LeBron out there necessarily, but with how much the defense is going to react to him catching the ball anywhere near the basket, those passes are pretty easy. All you have to do is make them, and he's doing that, and he's he worked his way to 50% shooting last night in that game, and it felt like none of his shots were very easy. I mean, we just said none of them were really layups and dunks. They were all jumpers and floaters and weird flip shots and stuff, and he made it work, especially that one late off the out of bounds play. It's like, that's not guardable. What are you really supposed to do there? But I think it's interesting. It's crazy how there's no answer, really.
Yeah.
It's everybody's 6 inches shorter than him. What are you like? What are you really even supposed to do when he's feeling good? It makes you realize how devastating he's going to be. He blocked 2 threes, made everybody freak out at the basket. That one Okogie layup up and under was the only basket I think anyone made against him at the rim. And then Booker and Beal were impressed with that one. But I don't know. I mean, I think Suns fans watching that are probably dreading this another era of Spurs dominance right away, 5 years later. They ruined Kawhi completely, and now here we are back with it.
Yeah, I think Pop kind of, I don't know, sold his soul to do this one again. There was no way he was going to retire if there was a chance this was going to happen. And we haven't even seen what it's going to turn into. He's probably never going to be weighty, but Kevin Durant got stronger. And I think once he actually gets stronger and he learns the NBA and he goes against some of these actual real centers and learns what strength he needs for that without getting buff or anything, that's when he's going to make a really crazy leap.
He played that way in France, which is kind of what's funny. And you would see, I mean, that French league had players, and especially the Euro League, who were former NBA guys, Thomas Walkup and Donatas Motiunas and kind you forgot, but those guys played against him overseas and they were bodying him and it was tough and he had to figure it out. So I'm kind of surprised they haven't done any of that you mentioned in the Mavs game. There obviously have been moments, but I just figured that they would camp him in the dunker spot or just have him get some basic post-ups and whatever. And they've kind of gone the opposite direction with it. So it'll be fascinating to see. Hopefully a little quieter of a game. I don't think going 0 for 2 home against the Spurs is going to feel great to these guys. So maybe a little less of the impressiveness on Thursday might be good. And then we'll see them again later in the season here in Phoenix. But I think that'll wrap us up for the day. Recap show coming after Suns Spurs late Thursday night. Finally can get back home in peace. The MLB will be gone from our lovely city, and I will be very, very happy. So you might get that episode a little earlier. Hit follow or subscribe wherever you're finding the show to get that one and more Monday through Friday throughout the season. Read Aaron over at FanBuzz, and I will catch you guys tomorrow.